Hey Math Fam, today we're going to go over the very exciting process of linking Proctorio exams to an exam in my math lab so students can access it directly from Canvas. So I always like to start off with having both of my accounts open. I like to do split screen so it's easier for me to see. So on the left, you see I have my Canvas account open with the appropriate class and the corresponding my math lab class that's already been linked to the Canvas course. So first things first, there's you want to go to where you have your quizzes. So I have them all set up already. All of the Proctorios quizzes, they're all pretty much one question quiz. The directions tell them to go through everything so that they have to follow a certain process so that they can access the exam. But you open up your quiz and you want to make sure that there's a green bar at the top giving you success that the Proctorio server connected to the Canvas server. So just remember, green is good. If you see a red bar at the top, refresh your browser and start over. Otherwise, things won't save. So green is good, red is bad. So the next thing you want to do is go into your corresponding My Math Lab course, pull up the student view of homework and exams. And we'll wait because everything is slow. There we go. And just so I don't get things confused with my exams and my homework, I will switch over to the quizzes and tests view for the most part. So you only see the study plans and the quizzes. Next thing, what I like to do is open up a new tab. So I'll right click on homework exams, open link a new tab. I want to see the manage view in this one. You can toggle back and forth on the same screen, but it's kind of easier just to reference it here. So it's like a new window. I go to my instructor tools, assignment manager, and the reason why I want to look at this, because I've already set everything up, but I like to do the change dates and assign status. So what happens is Proctorio and Canvas link everything to a specific password. So you have to make sure that these passwords match when you go through the Canvas and the Proctorio. So they're already kind of set up because I transferred a course, but sometimes the passwords are different, so we're going to check that too. So go back to homework exams. So first things first, I will click on the first corresponding quiz. A new window pops up. I always need to triple click the top so that you can copy that entire exam link. We'll do the shortcut, so we'll say Control C. And then I'll move this a little sideways if I can drag it. Maybe not. Sometimes the view in the screen share in Zoom doesn't work off. So I'll just move it to the side. The main thing is I want to make sure that the ID numbers match for the assignment. So there's an ID number somewhere in the middle of that link. So we're going to edit our quiz. Notice that they have the same name. And pretty much just be patient, wait for Canvas to load. If you go too fast, sometimes things don't save. So main thing is we want to make sure that all three tabs show at the top. Proctorio settings takes a little longer to show up, so just be patient for that. Open up the questions tab. And we are going to now edit our question, the one question we have. I have two. Don't worry about the second one. Click on the pencil. And what you're going to do is highlight this link that I already set up. And really important, we press Control K. The rich content editor links don't give you this special box. So Control K, we open up the link to this. And you can then triple click. Let me show you if I can. This is a link to an old assignment. Notice that the numbers do not match. And so that would be an issue if your students try to open up the exams. They're not going to be able to pull up the right one. So we've already copied our link in this particular exam. We can triple click this link here and press Control V to paste the same link. So notice now the numbers match. Everything else, you probably entered, you have to enter yourself. We've already set it up so you don't have to go through this. So we press OK. The next thing we do is press update question. And then really important thing to do to make sure that the passwords match. If you don't already have the password set up, this is the last step. We can now close out. I don't know if you guys can see this in the window. See if I can shrink it. Usually when I close out this window, I usually press the X button. I don't know if it'll let me do it. Maybe. If I press cancel, it makes me scroll back down to the thing, but you do what you want. So I press the X button to close that out now that that's clear. We're going to go over to Proctorio settings. And I already saved the settings that I want, but the main thing is the Proctorio exam settings. We're going to scroll down. And right by verify login, we make sure that card is clicked. You want to open it up. Show the password. And this is why I had the other tab open. If you open up the other tab with the assignment manager, notice getting started with my math lab quiz, notice those passwords are not the same. So that would be an issue with linking. So what you want to do is copy the password. You can move over to the other window and make sure it's the right quiz that you're dealing with. And you can triple click to highlight and Control V, and now the password should match. I'm paranoid, so I will always update the changes right after I do this. That way, if anything goes wrong, we don't lose everything. So I update the changes on this one. Takes a little while, so we'll be patient. There we go. Press the OK to make sure you see everything again, and now the links match. So that's good. What we want to do now, back to a canvas, we're going to accept the password. And now we should be ready to save. And so we're going to do this a couple more times to make sure you got everything. Okay, so next time we're going to move back to our homework. My next exam is labeled 2 Part 1. I'm going to open up that link. I'm going to triple click and Control V to copy it. Excuse me, Control C. Next thing I'll do is move it over to the side so I can compare it later. Mainly it's the course ID that we're looking at. To get to the right quiz in Canvas, we're going to press quizzes. Usually if it's split screen, everything's at the top and you have to kind of scroll down. We will open up exam 2 Part 1. Notice that they match already, and wait for this Proctorio thing to finish. Be patient. Notice got a green bar at the top. Green is good. So we now can go in and edit. And then just be patient. See red bar at the top. What we want to do with that, sometimes it won't save properly. So what I always do is refresh the screen. Or sometimes you can log back out. So I'm going to reload just to make sure. And then we'll show you if anything goes wrong. It's a good thing it happened during this video. This happens every few tests or so, so just kind of have to be patient with that. Okay, so go back. We're going to go back to questions. We're in exam 2 Part 1. We're going to edit the question by clicking on the pencil. We're going to highlight our link, Control K. Now we can triple click this old URL, Control V, and then make sure your assignment numbers match. Press OK. Press update question, and then just go back and check. I'll X out my particular exam now. And I'm going to go to Proctorio exam settings, open that up, go to the verify login, show the password, and then just double check with your assignment manager tab. Exam 2 Part 1, just make sure they match. And it looks like they do. We can usually the first few letters are okay, but we're good. So we'll just this is more of a precaution. If you had to make a new one, you would just copy and paste it over to the new assignment. So we'll accept it and we'll save and cross our fingers that nothing freezes. And we're good to go on this one. All right, one more time. and we'll be okay. So we have exam 2 part 2. Open that up. Triple click. Control C. Move window over. We're going to click on the course so that we can get to the quiz menu. Click on the corresponding exam 2 part 2. Wait for Proctorio to load. Cross your fingers, everything's green. We are good to go. Press edit. And then just wait for the Proctorio settings to appear. We're now going to go to questions, and we're going to edit this top question right here. Click on the pencil, highlight your link, Control K, everyone. Triple click the URL, Control C. Oh, excuse me, it should have been Control V. Try one more time. Let me go back to my link. Control C with exam link. Triple click, Control V, and the assignment numbers now match. Press OK. Update question. Press save, and we should be good to go. If you want to double check one more time with the passwords, we could have done that as well. For the most part, if you copy the same course over from my math lab, passwords usually don't change unless you've made different arrangements in the My Math Lab, but I wanted to show you just in case with that. Hope this helps. Now, if we end up looking at how many exams that we actually made, we got to repeat this process maybe 500 more times, and you will be good for one of your classes. And just remember, you got to do this every time you link something new to a My Math Lab class. So have fun.